Here we are again with Alan Jaeger, our friend, old friend of the ABCA, and I like when and I mentioned this in the intro. I mean, you're part of the driving force behind the ABCA podcast. I mean, you kind of mentioned back in the day in 2016 to get this going, so I owe you a debt of gratitude that I've been able to kind of do the 2.0 ABCA podcast here.
Hey, listen, man. It just was one of those instinctive moments with Sheets. We were walking around my neighborhood in Santa Monica, and podcasts, as you know, are starting to pop up. And I just thought with the ABCA's access and Sheets' access, and he's a natural, as you know. And I said, man, you should do it. And it's just cool how he jumped on it. And it's just one of those moments. It's not an ego thing. It's just more of as you know, man, it's what we're about. It's community, it's education. And I think at the end of the day, that was the coolest part of it, is how it turned into this cool outlet for the ABCA, man. And you've obviously just haven't skipped a beat. And it's just awesome that it's just such a prominent fixture with the ABCA now.
Speaking of friends of the ABCA, do you want to give Lou Pavlovich a shout out?
I really do. In fact, I got goosebumps. Lou is one of the first human beings in my life that really gave me a voice with collegiate baseball. I think it might have been around 95, 90, I can't really remember, but whatever it was, I had an article with Lou about long toss, and then he gave me an outlet for all these mental training themes, and and I've probably gone to lunch maybe 10 different times, 8 different times with Lou during, I can't remember, spring training, whatever it was. Just I try to make it a habit of seeing Lou and going to collegiate baseball's headquarters. And anybody that knows Lou just knows that he's just the sweetest, kindest, and also extremely sophisticated person. And thank you for doing that, because he deserves everything and more.
Yeah. And you had another great idea, because you reached out to Adam Revelette and I about doing a side interview to maybe go a little bit more in depth on our Inside Pitch magazines, which we are going to implement that. So before the Inside Pitch magazine, or once it gets sent out, I will do another in-depth interview that Adam's going to kind of handpick. But this is perfect because you're in the convention edition, and you have articles on the back page. It's called Put It in Neutral. And this is a topic that I mentioned in the intro that needs a little more clarification, probably because not as many people probably know the term neutrality. I know some of us do that study that, but dive in a little bit more on neutrality for people that maybe don't know what that concept is.
Yeah. And by the way, man, just on the side note, brother, I really appreciate you having me on and doing this. I want to make sure we always bring our awareness to that as well. It's greatly appreciated. I mean, look, man, one of the things I love about our conversations is you love to go deep. And so I think we're going to have a chance to get pretty deep today, but try to keep it simple. Neutrality is one of those words that is, as we talked about, before the Zoom, or before the recording, we talked about this idea that there's something about this idea of, well, what does it mean to be in a neutral state? And I think that to just cut to the chase, I liken it to really meditation. It's really, to me, come more out of a meditation practice. You learn one of the first things you learn in meditation, at least I felt was the most important thing I learned, was this idea that when thoughts come up in your mind, is you don't push them away and you don't block them out. That just tends to give them more power and more energy, like you're feeding them. But the idea is you allow them. That's a really important word I've been using like nonstop lately. Allow. You allow them to be there. You don't resist them. And allowing is another way of saying, I'm going to be neutral. I'm not going to push them away. I'm not going to fight them. I'm not going to try to manipulate them. I'm just going to let them be. And so I would just say, to keep it simple, that neutral is really just about not adding or not engaging your mind and thoughts or even a situation. It's just about allowing what is to be. If you feel a need to act on something, by all means act on it. But it has more to do with this idea of just engaging and dancing with the thoughts and ruminating. And that's where a lot of, I know we'll get into this later, but that's where a lot of stress and anxiety comes from. It's the additional, I always tell people, it's not the first thought that's the issue. It's the second thought and the third thought and the ninth and the 30th.
It's the rumination on it is the big part. And I like the term, what you resist will persist.
Big time. Yep.
And there's a good, we were talking about Zen parables. There's a really good Zen parable about a Chinese farmer and the word maybe. So if nobody has read that parable, go read it, because it really is about staying neutral and no matter what happens, and because you really don't know when situations, and that's why I always ask about fail forward moments. I think what people create as bad situations, they turn those into that rather than just allowing it, sitting with it, and then letting it pass. I think that's the best way that you can do it. And even if you're going to take a breath and take a pause before you react to something, usually just that little pause will take care of a lot of headaches for people.
Yeah, and also I know where this is going to go, because it's the other word besides allowing. It's the two A's. I've been using allowing a lot, and I've been using the word awareness a lot. And it goes hand in hand with what you just said, Ryan, which is it starts with awareness, which is a connector to having a meditation or mental practice each day. Because the more you practice this and become aware of thoughts coming up and getting skilled at being neutral to the thoughts rather than engaging them, or as you said, resisting them, well, then what happens is you build an awareness through that mental practice, just like you'd get an acumen of any skill, like ground balls in the hole. If you're not as good as ground balls to your right as you are to your left, and then you take 1,000 ground balls the next day to your right, or whichever way I said is the side you need to work on, you're going to get more skilled at that. And so this idea of having a practice each day to be neutral, but also to raise your level of awareness so that throughout the day, as you just said, you're aware to stop and pause before the train gets rolling, right? And before that you start, when I like to say, take the dance. So awareness is a massive piece to this. And how do you become more aware? Well, you have a practice each day that builds that awareness.
Yeah, that's been about 8 straight years for me with my morning practice. So it's been huge mental health benefit, feel way more creative. And I actually sent one of the audios that I listened to before presentations, I actually sent out to the youth stage speakers this week. That's the first time I've ever done that for them, because I know it can be stressful for some people that are getting up on a stage for the first time. I actually really enjoy that side of it, speaking on stage. But I think a lot of it has to do with all the training that I've done up to that point. Yes. I reframe, when I'm talking to athletes and they view it as anxiety, I try to get them to reframe it as excitement. Yeah. So rather than use the word anxiety, I try to get them to reframe it as excitement, where you're preparing for something that should be exciting to happen.
I love that, man. I think that's so smart. And also another word, it just hit me as you were talking, is inspiring, meaning there's a reason. I've told this to other speakers before, because we all know it can be intimidating or challenging when you speak in front of a large group, unless you have you're built a certain way, like sounds like you are, where you don't think about it. And I feel like I've gotten better at it. But yeah, I think it's normal. Obviously they talk about how scary public speaking can be to there's studies and all that about it.
It's above dying for people.
Right.
Fear of public speaking is ahead of dying on the list.
Yeah, so I love what you said about reframing it. and something that I've used with coaches as well is I've said, look, there's a reason they're asking you to speak, because you're an educator, and people feel like you're going to have an impact on the community. That's why they're asking you to speak. So look at this more as you're sharing, and really you're inspiring is what you're doing as a teacher. It's what we all do, whether we realize it or not. I think we do realize it, is that we're ultimately just trying to inspire. Yes, we're trying to teach and educate, but we're also trying to inspire. And so I love your idea, Ryan, of reframing to excitement. And I would add a couple other words in there, which could be, inspiring, And also inform. Another word I love is informing. You're up there because you're there to inform, and people want you up there.
I mean, someone that has a hard time getting back to neutral, what are some other tips for them to try to get back? Or they may not even know what neutral is and the state of being neutral.
Number one, man, and I know you're familiar with this too, is I'd say the breath is maybe as big as anything. It's the breath is there 24 hours a day. It's always there as a support system, and it's always in the present moment. And it's also, by the way, not a thought, as you know. And I like the idea of going to the breath for several reasons. And so that's a great starting point. So if nothing else, go to your breath as a reset, as a stop. Maybe you don't even know what the word neutral, you don't understand the concept of neutrality quite yet. But the idea of just stopping and breathing, as you said earlier, and pausing is step one. But I would still say, no matter what, it's going to come back to awareness, meaning the more aware you become of what it means to be neutral or what your mind may be thinking about throughout the day, the better that you can be aware to pause, right? And to know to use your breath. But the other things you could do is you can tune into your breathing. You can instantly put your attention on something else that you feel like, how about this word, is constructive or instructive, right? So that's another thing to do is direct your attention. Well, where do I want it to go? Like I've paused, I've taken a breath, now what? And so I actually talk about this neutrality, as I think you know, in two parts. Part one is, well, three parts. One is being aware, but really step one is to be neutral once you're aware. And then step two is, okay, where do I want to channel my attention or direct it to now? And we can use this as a good sports analogy too. You're in the game. Let's say you gave up a hit and the bases are loaded, and now you're worrying about, is the coach going to take me out of the game? So there goes the ruminating, right? There goes the thinking, the future, the past. And all of a sudden you're like, nope, I'm going to take my breath. That's good. Now I'm neutral. Okay, now what? Step two is to redirect or direct your attention. Where do you want it to go? Well, we teach all the athletes to have a process. So as an example for a pitcher, my process would be breathe, which, okay, I just did. Maybe I'll take another breath. And then where's my focal point? And then I want to attack my focal point. Right, so we'll use this more in life because the point of the article with Adam was to really talk about more with life away from the field. So let's use life as an example. Okay, so you're somewhere with a bunch of friends. Someone says something that really bothers you. Well, number one, you can address it. This is not about being in denial. But two, let's say it's something that you don't really feel like you want to address. Maybe you'll address it later. So you want to get back to enjoying the party, but meanwhile, you're ruminating and thinking about how upsetting that thought was. Or the idea is that unless you're going to take action on it, which you can, and address it with the person, be neutral. Let it be, breathe, and now redirect your attention back to, I'm with a bunch of my friends at a party, and I want to just be engaged and enjoy the night. So that, I guess, would be a couple of simple examples.
Yeah. And yeah, I do talk about the suicide rate numbers that we've had, really post-COVID. 2021, it was 48,000. In 2022, it was 49,000. 76% of that is white males. So that's kind of what our epidemic is right now with the suicide rates. And I just feel like people don't have a good daily practice built in, which allows for a lot of those negative thoughts to creep in, and those turn into harmful situations, whether it's self-harm or drugs and alcohol. I think that's where you see huge things happen because people don't have those type of practices built up to help them make better decisions.
Yeah, and again, it would start with an awareness that I have thoughts that are turning into actions that are turning into negative ruminating and negative obsessing or dwelling. So that's one, to be aware of it. And then two, like you said, to have tools. And that's why I love this tool being neutral, because it doesn't mean that, being in therapy isn't vital. It doesn't mean that, there aren't other tools as well. But in a way, you can almost say, I don't know if I've ever said this before, but you can almost say that the origin of the majority of any kind of dysfunctions that a human being may have or mental health issues someone may have you're going to kind of stem not from maybe that first thought. It's going to go back to something we talked about earlier. It's going to stem from what are you adding to the first thought, and then the second thought, and the 50th thought, and then all of a sudden, as you know, it can become very emotional. And now we're including anger and fear and stress and worry. And so, again, the reason I feel like this topic is so important is just to, as you said, to get people A, aware of this topic, neutrality, but B, to realize that if they just start applying this tool and chipping away throughout the day and having a practice each day with some form of meditation, that all of a sudden as they get into the day, they have tools now to stop the thing at the start, rather than that first thought turning into that 400th thought, and then that becoming, of course, potentially very deep emotional stuff, which again is where we're going now down to this ultimate place, unfortunately, or this darkest place, if you will, with like suicide. So again, I just love the fact that we're talking about this, because I actually feel like if you can get to people before the molehill turns into the mountain, or whatever the analogy is.
That's what Scott Fox calls it. We're not trying to fill cavities. You need to have a daily maintenance program built in, and hopefully things are going great. But that's a way to stay on top of it and keep it rolling in that right direction by having a daily practice, because it does kind of help you head things off at the pass. And they call it being the observer, which I really like that term, where you're basically being the observer. You're going to observe, and again, it's much better to just allow things to happen and sit with it and feel those emotions. It's great to feel those emotions, but then reframe and redirect to something else. And that's just part of all of it. You mentioned the continuum.
Yeah. I'm going to go to that in 1 second. If I can just say one thing, because you said something really powerful. It just struck something with me. When you're also neutral, because you just said something about this that's really, really important. The more you become neutral, the more you can start to feel like you're distancing yourself from the thought. So here's a really interesting topic. You don't take it as personally. So a lot of times, as you know, we have a negative thought or situation, and we can get in our heads about it and start to ruminate. And now the person part, it gets very strong in the person. One of the beautiful things about being neutral is you feel a sense of objectivity. You feel a sense of, like you said, the observer. That's the word you said. And you step back. And all of a sudden you start creating some distance. So it's not like it's right here in your head and in your body. All of a sudden you start feeling like it's a little bit over here. And it's a little bit over here. Maybe the more you keep focusing on this neutral piece and becoming more aware, the more distance you get. And all of a sudden it's like, instead of there's a lot of clouds around the body and the sun, you can barely feel it. All of a sudden the sun is beaming. In other words, with the metaphors, you become the sun because you're now creating more distance in space from it. So anyway, I just thought you using the word observer, I want people to also hear this, that part of the beauty of being neutral is that you also start to take yourself maybe out of that dance with the thoughts. And then who are you when you're not in the dance with your thoughts is a whole nother topic for another day. But it's like, wow, I'm in this space. I'm in this kind of free place. I'm kind of back to just being my normal flowing, happy person, if you will, whatever you want to couch that. The continuum, where I guess the continuum and neutral sort of align, is the continuum. I look at the continuum as sort of like, I'll give you a line I wrote down that I always bring up with people, especially anybody that's willing to listen. And then the line is this, and the feedback from this line people love because it gives them a different take on the zone. And then we'll tie this back to the continuum. And the line is that the zone is always happening. That's the sun. The sun's always shining. The question is, are you thinking about something that's taking you out of the zone? So now, what if we use the word neutral to say, oh, neutral is just allowing me to be back in the zone that's always there. Again, the zone's always happening. It's always there. It's just whether I thought myself out of it. And now we can use this metaphor with life. And the continuum. So in other words, I'm going through life, something bothered me, whether it's on the field or off the field, breathe, step back, pause, be neutral. Now, if I don't take the dance with the mind and the thoughts, whatever it's coming from, I have a chance to just reside or land back into what's already there. And so the reason the continuum is so important is just for people to be aware that it's always there. It's sort of like, you said something earlier, Ryan, that was important. Like, people maybe aren't even aware to know to pause or be aware that there's something called neutrality. And I would say the same thing about this idea of the continuum, that if people just knew that the zone or the flow, right, your best day ever in life is always there, literally 24/7. Now, all of a sudden, this idea of being neutral allows me to just step back and really step into what's already there.
Yeah, and with our first pre-call, I talked about Trevor Moawad's book, Getting to Neutral, which and he does a really good job of kind of explaining that in any situation, not to view it positively or negatively, just to try to stay neutral as you can. Because, again, what we ruminate on or what we fear, 95% of the time never happens. And so mostly it's created within your ears about what could happen, the what ifs that might happen, or this could happen, and 98% of the time it never happens, and usually it works out the way it's supposed to anyway.
Totally agree, man. And I think that's just another thing it's another concept that the more people are aware of, the more they can realize that first thought, like you said, if it's 98% not even going to happen. And we're spending so much time in that 2%, like the worrying, when it's 98% not going to happen theoretically. And just to know, like, hey, step back, be neutral. There's such a large percentage of chance that this isn't even happening. And again, it's back to awareness. Just that statement alone, Ryan, is so important for people to realize. Like, yes, just to be aware that just to know that my thoughts are generally we've talked.
And
about
if you're worried about it, write it down and check back in a week or two and see if it happened.
Yeah, you can check back in 10 minutes.
Journal it. What you thought was going to happen, write it down, journal it, and check back in a couple of weeks and see if how you thought it was going to turn out. It did. It probably didn't.
Yeah. Yeah, I think we both know, and I think everybody actually knows it. It's just whether they're aware of it or not, that so many of the things that we think and worry about in the future or the past, it's okay. It's just us thinking about it and projecting. And I just love this topic, because this topic, the idea is that the thing I love about neutral too is that it's a constant, meaning it's just always there. It's back like the continuum. It's the thought of you just being able to be neutral and then getting skilled at it. And at first, it might be a little tricky because you have old thoughts that have a lot of history and a lot of familiarity, and it might come back. And so you're neutral really well, and then 3 minutes later it comes back, and that's part of the practice too, is just to keep saying it's okay. Allow it. And you know this from meditating. Just allow it. Just keep allowing it, and then eventually the idea is that you're back on your raft.
This too shall pass. This too shall pass. Hey, you mentioned you're revamping the return to throwing protocol, and honestly, neutrality, you can link that to players coming off injuries too. Because there's that fear of, will I ever be able to play again? Will I ever be able to pitch again? And so there's some neutrality involved with returning to throwing too.
Dude, you know, man, how this works. It applies to everything. Everything. Like, you could create a worry about just about anything in life, whether it's return to throwing post-surgery, whether it's you're going to make your high school team or not, whether you're going to get drafted or not, whether you're going to get cut or not. You can go to both sides. You can go to the positive or the negative. And at the end of the day, this idea of being neutral, one of the most beautiful things about being neutral is that the idea is it takes out the future and the past. It literally, I hate to say eliminates it, but it just basically allows it to go wherever it needs to go. And in a way, it just doesn't exist. All that exists is the continuum. Back to the continuum.
Hey, how did the Thanksgiving Zoom webinar go?
Amazing. You know, I sit there, I felt like a little mini ABCA show. Got a little taste of what it's like for you guys. We did it the year before as well. And look, I'm just sitting there honestly as a student, a friend. These are friends of mine, of course. But man, you know how it goes. There's something very magical about hosting and providing such brilliant speakers to speak and share. And also the format we have, as you know, is very, very interactive on purpose. And so anybody can check in and ask questions. And so, long story short, man, thank you for asking. It was a joy. And for me, it just, I don't know, it just felt so cool to hear these brilliant people speak. And also the appreciation I get from so many people DMing me afterward and thanking me and how much they got out of the Zoom session. So yeah, it was an ABCA moment, man.
And for people from the outside looking into you, they see you kind of as that calm demeanor. But what China says, when you're on the golf course and tennis court, like you're a madman. So how are you able to kind of take neutrality into the competitive environment? Because I know you're fiery in the competitive arena, and it's probably not your persona. What allows you to kind of maintain neutrality, but also find that different gear when you're competing?
Yeah, I think what China really means, I think he means I'm fiercely or very committed to the plan. It's not like, maybe in the old days, yes, in the old days for sure, I was pretty too intense, no doubt about it. But I think what China really means is that what I do is I channel all of that determination, if you will, instead of into anger and intensity and then kind of that emotional charge. It's more of that. I try to be more zen in that way. I want to be quiet, but I want to be free, but I want to be clear and committed. And I think that commitment level, even though at some point, really, if you get into a good flow state, you don't even really feel like you're committing as much as you're just doing it, like riding a bike. Yeah. But no, I would say what I try to do, especially in tennis, because golf, I just know in golf I have to be quiet, I have to be calm, I have to be free. Not that you don't want those in all sports, but I feel like in tennis, I have to channel a little bit more exertion, right? A little bit more assertion. And so I think, to be honest with you, I try to practice what I preach. Number one, I have a process in anything I do, even speaking, or not just in sports, but just to stick with tennis for a second. I have a process, which is to be on my toes, slightly lean forward. I try to be in space and be free so I can react any direction, right, as freely as possible, and really committing to just trusting the shot. I'm one thing I think I've really gotten pretty good at over the years, because I've taught it for 30 years, is I just try at all costs, not that I'm perfect, but at all costs, it is now. It's committing to my process now. I don't know what day of the week it is. I don't know what the score is. Not that I'm perfect at this, but that's my intention. And I think that's where China's talking about, that I get, kind of very, very committed and determined to my process.
Do you have any newer fail-forward moments? I know I asked you a long time ago about a fail-forward moment. Do you have any newer fail-forward moments?
Fail-forward meaning like
something you thought was going to sidetrack you, but looking back now, it helped you move forward?
I'd say the main thing that happened to me in my life, a junior at Cal State Northridge, is I went through a mental health challenge, if you will, and so much so that I left the team for 6 weeks, 8 weeks, and sort of was like, in a way, the end of my career. But it was the greatest blessing, or not the greatest, but I'll just say it was a very critical blessings in my life for sure, because it got me on my path to study the mind, mental health, spirituality, Zen, meditation. And so I'm here today talking about things we're talking about because of that. Because if I hadn't gone through that, in my mind, I was going to play baseball as long as I could. And then I was going to be maybe an accountant. I don't think I would have ended up doing anything behind a desk, to be honest with you, looking back. But at the time, I just assumed I'd do something in the business world. And not that there would have been anything wrong with that, or I might have been a coach still. But man, failing forward, so to speak, I like that concept. It absolutely was one of my greatest moments and teachers of all time. And at the time, it was absolute. You talk about feeling scared, feeling like he had no idea what was going on, no tools. It was a very, very rough and challenging time. But as we all know in life, man, that's what those difficult, challenging times are arguably our greatest teachers, or some of our greatest teachers. And so bring this back.
It's always the adversity that you're going to learn much more from adversity than you are when things are going well. I just don't I don't think you have ever learned when things are going well. You might a little bit, you might fall into it, but it's always from adverse situations and setbacks that help you move forward. And, it's true. Like, you might have to take a step back to go forward. It happens to all of us. When do you mix time in for your daily practice? When is your time to practice?
Yeah, I'm doing this to you again. I'm sorry, man. Just another point on what you just said. I think to bring it also back to mental health for other people that are going through challenges right now, both of what we're talking about is so important for them to realize that even if it seems dark or tough or challenging, just to trust that it's a teacher, and just trust that the light's there. The zone's always happening, whether you realize it or not. And so, yeah, I just wanted to make a point about that. I love the question, Ryan, and you're going to love this answer. Do you like how I'm going on a limb? And if you don't like the answer, be honest with me.
I'm neutral on answers.
I love it, man.
Stay neutral.
Give the guy.
I'll let the guest decide that. I'm a big Rick Rubin fan, so he's been out and about a lot here on social, but he's got a great term on basically taking the audience out of any kind of content that he puts out. Because I think it does allow you to stay neutral on putting content out, as if you're really coming from the heart and making it from the heart. Because some people are going to resonate with it and some people aren't. But you don't know what people are going to resonate with. So just put something out from the heart and you're going to be fine. Yeah.
Yeah. If anybody out there has not seen the Rick on 60 Minutes.
Yeah.
It's what's Rick's last name? Rick
Rubin.
Rick Rubin. It blew me away. I
started with the Beastie Boys and Def Jam. Started with Def Jam Records and then got sideways and moved to, I think Shangri-La is the name of his recording studio. There's a really good documentary on Shangri-La itself that he's in, but it basically takes you through the whole recording studio area in his house. It's very cool. The Avett brothers are from North Carolina originally, but he's in their documentary too, where they actually went to record one of their albums. And so I really like the Avett brothers as well, but I'm a big fan of Rick Rubin's.
Yeah, well, make sure you go to YouTube or CBS to watch that 60 minutes. I did not want it to end. It was so enthralling, and he is amazing.
Talking about being in tune to the universe.
Oh, talk about being in the flow and being in tune with being neutral if things come up, because he just wants to be in the flow and create and be an artist. So,
and Jim Richardson in our office played an instrument, was in a band. So we talk about music a lot. And here's an example of a person that doesn't know how any of the equipment works. He can't play an instrument. He just understands what sounds good. He's a genius as far as understanding what sounds good to the ear.
Yeah. Yeah. Your question. So my stock answer would normally be in the mornings. I used to do it before I did anything. Literally, I'd shower, wake up, maybe have a small bite, and then meditate. And I have a stretching routine, which is maybe about an hour. Lately, I wake up, I might do some things. I try to stay off of any kind of technology. Not that I'm perfect at it, but essentially to answer your question is I'll at some point find my way right over there in my room on my carpet. And it's usually between 40 minutes and an hour where I'm doing all different forms of either meditating, but I'm definitely stretching too. And then I usually formally will sit for a certain amount of time. But here's sort of the kicker to your question that I hope you like. I have been focused for about maybe 2 years now on bringing the meditation, the continuum, into like. So the real answer to your question is that I'm really focusing sounds a little bit too efforting, too much. But to use that term, I'm trying to be aware of meditating all the time. Like I want to be in that state of awareness and freedom and clarity and just flowing, if you will, through the day where I, from everything I've studied and everything I've felt, when you're flowing, your instincts are heightened, your senses are heightened. So you're going to tend to make, clearer decisions. You're going to tend to be more aware of if a negative thing comes up, to be neutral much faster. So to answer your question is, meditation for me now has really just become a way of life. It's just something that's back to the continuum. I'm trying to continually be in that space and that flow. And I feel like it's helped me a ton. If something negative comes up or a distracting thought, I feel like my awareness level is really high or much higher because I'm not just, that's great. It's not that I'm just doing 20 minutes a day or whatever it is. I feel like I'm getting hours in a day of practice. And so that's the answer. I hope you like it.
Have you had a chance to look at Inside Pitch, or is it just your article?
No, I don't think the magazine won't be out until
Adam sent me the PDF Dropbox. I got it here. It's good. I started to dive into it a little bit, but wanted to give all the contributors a shout out. Obviously we don't make that thing go without the contributors that put content in there for every edition. And then obviously with Adam's hard work and Jon Litchfield and Keith Madison, with Lou retiring, it's almost like we're picking up the banner here for where Lou left it. And again, a shout out to Lou Pavlovich. I was in there as well. I was in collegiate baseball, 10 rules of recovery and the time management planner. So I got a few in there. So Lou, I appreciate
Tucson?
you.
You were at his place in Tucson?
I have not ever been. I was never made it out to Tucson.
Oh, I'm sorry. What did you say? I missed.
I was in collegiate baseball. One of my articles was in collegiate baseball.
Oh, yeah.
So.
Yeah, it's special, man. Yeah, I was really bummed. I mean, I'm happy for him. It's obviously for the retiring part and how hard people don't realize, like, what Lou does, like, basically, well, Diane, his wife, obviously helps a ton too. But what Lou does between all the polls and all the coaches he talks to, and high school and JC and Division 1, 2, 3, NAIA, it's just soup to nuts, as they say, man. He does. They do it all over there, and Diane really behind the scenes.
I started to read it in high school because my dad would get it, so I was an avid collegiate baseball reader in high school. Because it was about really the only thing that you could get your hands on that was dedicated to mostly college, which is tremendous, college and high school. So it's fun.
It is, and they're just so sweet. I'm fortunate because I got to meet Diane a number of times, and being at the facility there, you just see, like, Diane is there every day too. Like, you see what goes on there, and with the two of them, I'm telling you, man, it's like the two of them, what they do, like, they do everything. They may even do the printing in there. Like, it's huge. Anyway, I'm so excited to see Lou, though. I just
what else are you looking forward to at the convention this year?
Everything. How about that? How's that an easy answer? Yes. Number one, I think the word that always jumps out with me is connection. Especially with the COVID and missing out a year or two. It's just connecting. It's connecting with such good friends, old friends, and then also obviously the new coaches. And I'm, we're both teachers by trade. So for me, we've had a booth there for, 10 or 12 or 14 years now. And just people coming to the booth and teaching as well. The speakers obviously are fantastic. You know how it is, man. It's just it's like for 4 days, you're just engulfed in this nonstop connecting, social, educational, and it's just,
You're with
I was going to say that there's that other piece that we both know so well. It's the stairwell at 1 a.m. Talking to a coach and just, it's those impromptu, spontaneous moments, man. There's so many countless things to talk about. I tell people who've never been to the ABCA show, it's a stock statement, man. I say it all the time. I'm like, if you've never been, I literally cannot do it justice. It will blow you away once you get there.
All right, what are some final thoughts?
Seeing you and all my ABCA brothers, man.
What are some final thoughts before I let you go? So I got to go pack here for Dallas, flying out tomorrow.
It's so cool that we're doing this 3-4 days before the convention. My final thoughts is, number one is thank you, because your passion for not only this topic, mental health, but obviously your passion for just being an incredible spokesperson for the ABCA. I know personally from you how important this topic is as well. Thank you for having me on and doing this and talking about a topic that I think and we both think is just really kind of one of those lightning rod kind of topics. It really can change someone's life. That's what I told Adam when we first started talking about this. It could literally change or save somebody's life. And so thank you for doing this. And my only final thoughts is just, I hope for people that are listening to this, try it, give it a chance. Reach out to us if they
and there's some guided too. I always try to nudge people to probably start with some sort of guided audio meditation first, just because of the amount of thoughts. And you say that all the time. I think it's 69,000 or 70,000 thoughts a day is what you have. And I think that's where people get sideways in the initial, as they try to do it without guided. Really dive into a Calm or a Headspace. If you don't know where to start, dive into Calm or Headspace. They have guided meditations on there, and start with a guided meditation. And if you want, my email is always on the backside of the podcast. Shoot me an email. I'll Dropbox all the audios that I have, that I've kept over the years, that I used with players, that I've used personally. I am more than readily available to share. If anybody wanted those audios, because I think it's a really good place to start if you haven't done it before, just because the amount of thoughts that you're going to have going on in between your ears when you sit down for the first time.
And if I can also, Ryan, since you mentioned it, so you just reminded me, so I have like 3 other little plugs and helpful things. One, I've got a guided meditation. Also, if anybody reaches out, DM us at Jaeger Sports. You can DM us. You can get our contact email, obviously, of course, through our website. So I have a guided meditation. That's one. 2, my partner and our VP China, as you know, Jim Batcher in China, put together a mental warrior program that has a very beginning steps of just laying on the mat for 5 minutes to start with. Jim has, I think, at least 3 maybe guided meditations in that mental warrior program. So that's 2. And then the other resource I want to make sure people are aware of. Oh, and then on YouTube, I also have a mental talk. There's a guided meditation on that as well, just Jaeger mental training on YouTube. And then lastly, China McCartney, as you know, I know
his hat's right behind me.
I see his hat. AAAD is free mental health resources. China McCartney, AAAD.org, I believe. And so China is obviously another incredibly helpful resource. But no, man, thank you.
Walking Tall movement is out there too. They've been on the podcast with me. So that's Chris Malzewski and Todd Blyleven's foundation. So they're trying to help with that as well for people that have gone through traumatic events. So, and I think that's part of the education piece too, is I don't think people realize there's more resources out there than you think. And if you need help, please reach out to someone. Don't feel like you're alone in this thing, because you're not. So just even a quick call or text to somebody could mean a world of difference for somebody.
I'm glad you said that. It's smart to just remind people, like, no matter what, no matter where you are, even if it feels dark, just reach out. Call somebody. It's unbelievable how much that could change your state. Just make the call.
Yep, make the call. All right, sir, you're the best.
Right back
at you, my
friend.
friend.
I appreciate you. I'll see you in like 3 days, man.
Yes, for sure.
How about that for a comment? I'll see you in 3 days.
I love it. Love it.